He doesn't live here anymore, but he still decides when my rent gets paid, when I can make plans, and when I have to explain myself. Every week looks roughly the same. I check the co-parenting app first thing in the morning because that's where he posts updates instead of texting. He'll mark the days he plans to see the kids, sometimes without asking, just filling in the shared calendar like it's still his house. If I don't acknowledge it within a few hours, he sends a follow-up message asking if I saw the update. If I say I did but need to adjust the time, he asks why. Not aggressively, just enough to make me type out an explanation. Child-related payments never come on the date we agreed to. They show up late or in pieces. When I ask about it, he says he's waiting on something from work or checking an expense first. If I don't ask, the payment sits there unresolved like a test to see how long I'll hold out. Meanwhile, he still has access to the shared account we never fully separated, so he can see when I pay for groceries or gas or a school fee. Sometimes he comments on it. Didn't realize that activity costs that much. Or, I thought you said you were staying home tonight. He checks in constantly under the excuse of the kids. He asks where they are, who they're with, what time we'll be back. If I answer briefly, he follows up with another question that turns it into a timeline. If I don't answer right away, he reminds me that communication matters for co-parenting. If I say I was busy, he asks doing what. Publicly, he's calm, polite. He tells people we're handling separation maturely. Privately, he shows up unannounced to drop something off for the kids. Even when I didn't ask. He'll knock like it's normal, stand close enough that the neighbors can see, and talk about schedules while glancing into my apartment. If I look uncomfortable, he acts confused. If I ask him to text first, he says he didn't think it was a big deal. I keep telling myself this is just part of separating with kids involved. That this is what responsible co-parenting looks like. Sometimes I even wonder if I'm overreacting. He's not yelling. He's not insulting me. He's just present. Constantly. In my finances. In my calendar. In my daily movements. We didn't meet in some dramatic way. We met through mutual friends at a small get-together after work. We talked about jobs, complained about rent prices, laughed about how tired we both were. He seemed organized. Responsible. He paid attention when I talked. That felt reassuring at the time. Early on, what felt safe was how structured everything was. Bills were paid on time. Plans were made in advance. Decisions were discussed, but he usually had already thought through the details. I didn't have to worry about logistics. I didn't have to chase things down. Felt like adulthood done properly. When we had kids, that structure felt even more important. There was a schedule. A system. Everything had its place. The first shift was small enough that I dismissed it. A conversation I wanted to have about money that kept getting postponed because he was tired or busy. A comment about checking in before making plans that I brushed off as concern. When I finally brought it up, he said he just liked being informed. That it wasn't control, it was coordination. I agreed. It sounded reasonable. Over time, the pattern set in. When I went along with his way of organizing things, life was smoother. Payments were prompt. Messages were friendly. When I pushed back or made a decision without looping him in, there was friction. Not a fight. Just delays. Extra questions. A subtle shift in tone. I learned quickly what was rewarded and what wasn't. In public, he praised how well we worked together. In private, I started editing myself. I'd think twice before scheduling something because I didn't want to deal with the follow-up questions. I'd wait to buy things until after child-related payments came through so I wouldn't have to explain a balance. I told myself this was temporary. That separation was complicated and this was just the adjustment period. I defended it to other people. I said, at least he's involved. I said, we're trying to keep things peaceful for the kids. I said, this sounds worse than it is. Even as I said it, I noticed how carefully I chose my words. I know this sounds small, but having to explain where I am every time I'm not home adds up. I know this sounds responsible, but when he can see every transaction I make, it doesn't feel neutral. I stay because I want peaceful co-parenting. Because I'm afraid that if I cut him off completely, he'll escalate. He already casually mentions legal options when things don't go his way, like it's just another tool on the table. I don't have the money for a drawn-out legal fight. I don't have a strong support system nearby to fall back on if things get messy. Stability matters for the kids, and right now, this is the version of stability I can manage. Fully leaving, isn't just a matter of blocking his number or closing an account. It would mean legal fees I can't afford. It would mean renegotiating custody with someone who already uses the system to his advantage. It would mean losing the small, fragile calm we have and risking something worse. There's also the practical loss of shared resources that I still depend on while I rebuild my life separately. The turning point wasn't a big moment. It was noticing how often I paused before doing something simple. How I checked the calendar not to plan my day, but to anticipate his reaction. How I feel a small spike of anxiety when I get a notification from the banking app because I know he sees it too. I left to be free, but I still move like I'm being supervised. Right now I'm aware of it, but I'm not out of it. I haven't made a clean break. I haven't found a way to set boundaries that don't come with consequences. I'm separated, living apart, technically independent, and still managed in ways that don't show up on paper. Some days I tell myself this is temporary. Other days I wonder if this is just a different version of the same control. If separation doesn't stop the control, what does it actually mean to leave?